Hello and welcome to this DMEXCO session on mastering the customer journey. My name's Adrian and I work at SAS. Hopefully you've already read the synopsis and you're in the right place virtually. Now, mastering the customer journey is just like the overused, and I'm going to use it once more, cliche that it is a journey. And today I want to describe 3 steps on that journey, starting from the simple and easy to attain through to the more complex but ultimately more rewarding. Now, the concept of a journey is nothing new, and I've been using it in marketing for at least 2 decades. We've got onboarding journeys, win-back journeys, commonplace. And these in the past have been very much expert insight driven rather than analytical insight driven. With that said, though, there's huge value in expert insight that can significantly increase the speed of learning. For example, a promo offer encouraging credit card customers to spend more than $1,000 isn't best targeted at people already spending $5,000. However, the order and timing of communications and the targeting of customers for communications have subtleties that benefit from being identified and having more efficient journeys. So let's start digging into that. For this simple first step, one can simply start performing journey tests. These tests can involve including or excluding steps, perhaps changing the order of steps. And when I say steps, I mean communications to customers or contacts with customers. Maybe you change the time between them or which route a segment of customers should go down. Now, sometimes multiple things are being tested here, and so the individual elements can't be independently analysed. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because one can quickly learn which of the sensible journeys are resonating most and performing best, and you can gain the benefit from those quickly. And then perhaps you can start drilling in and doing more testing within those journeys. Now, step 2 naturally should be more analytical, and for those of you familiar with multi-touch attribution, you probably either dread or revel in the complexity of the data challenge and analytical challenge here. Now, when I'm talking about multi-touch attribution, I'm not talking about first touch or last touch or any of the other rules-based approaches to attribution, as I don't perceive those to be analytical. I think they can throw up spurious results. However, at SAS, we do provide the results of each of those rules-based approaches alongside our analytical approach, which helps with comparison and contrast. One benefit of the analytical approach is that it can observe the natural tests that are happening in the world, such as the time between visits to your website, that you can then analyse and understand without having to test. Now, I've got an example here. And what you can, for example, find is that you might be able to flag up when to inject yourself into the customer journey to facilitate a better result. Again, as an example, if 99% of your customers convert within 48 hours, then contacting them through an available channel within that 48 hours makes sense. There's a lot of additional challenges that occur, such as managing identities across devices, ensuring that contributions are truly incremental, allowing for additional traffic sources or non-traffic sources but important touch points in the customer journey that could be digital, could be non-digital. Hopefully you'll be pleased to hear that SAS has an out-of-the-box solution for this, seen here and on the previous slide. And by virtue of being out of the box, it allows for lots of attribution models to be created. Now, you may wonder, why do I need lots of attribution models? Well, let's go into that in the next slide. Some of the reasons for having multiple models are obvious and some less so. You might have a strategy whereby you're trying to drive people to your website, but once there, you've got a subtly different strategy to try and get them to convert. Therefore, one model for people visiting your site and one model for converting could be useful. Secondly, you possibly have a wide portfolio of products that you are separately trying to promote. For example, you could have a brand with both a grocery business and a financial services business where you need to drive traffic in different ways to them. Even within financial services, there are cards and loans, i.e. lending products, there's savings products, there are insurance products, for example. Drilling into insurance, there's life, house, car. And so when each of these are separately modelled, it starts to become clear which products your brands are well known for and are attracting traffic directly, and which are less well known and need greater promotion. And you can go down to that product level to be really quite niche and targeted with your strategy. So overall, this is a complex subject, and if you're not doing the first or second step, don't stress too much. We've got lots to stress about at the moment. And in my humble opinion, step 1 and 2 are already starting to run. The analytical attribution is sprinting in my view. The next step is either akin to flying or being in the Olympic final. You can choose your own analogy, but let's start to unpick that. Now it's worth pausing for a moment to recognise the different persona types that probably exist in your organisation, along with most organisations in the world when it comes to analytics. Some people are business focused and they want do it for me analytics, like an easy button, where they're clear on their intentions, but they have limited expertise or domain knowledge in analytics or data management. Versus those perhaps data scientists that want to be enabled, i.e. given the tools to do it for themselves. And they have that deep analytical expertise. And maybe the business challenge also warrants the additional effort and the deepness of the analytics because there's more benefit to be had from that. And so we'll start digging in and we'll have one example from either end of the spectrum, and we'll go through that on the next slide. So this first example is on the end of the spectrum, that's the easy button. So SaaS has the ability to automatically use customer behaviors to target customers for campaigns and offers that you're making in your web channels, simply with the toggle of a button, that one on the left that says Enable Analytical Targeting. With this enabled, the entire end-to-end targeting process is done for the user. That is, the data is captured, both observation data and outcome data, i.e. what they were doing and did they kind of convert, essentially, which is your definition of conversion. It could be a click-through, it could be more KPI focused, such as they ultimately put something in their basket and purchased, or they purchased the product, such as a loan. Then the models are run on that data. The customer and prospect base is scored, and then that score is made available to target customers going forward with that campaign. And so the choice who to select for the campaign is then made a little bit easy for the marketer or the business user, with suggestions at each of these deciles and relevant information at each decile. And so the other nice thing about this is that the model is built on a regular basis. So, and the data is constantly shifting forward. So it's very much a dynamic model. Unlike some techniques whereby it might be self-learning, but the old data is not forgotten, just new data is added, and maybe even the models not rebuilt on such a regular basis. As such, this dynamic approach means that the data and the model is always fresh and up to date with the latest behaviors. So that's the easy button. Let's talk about a more complex one on the next slide. So if we now switch personas to the enable me to do it myself, we also have an approach. Now this is far more complex than the previous one, more complex than a toggle button, but it also has the potentials to combine the aspects of personalization, journeys and attribution all into one model, and then use that insight to predict and present to the user or your customer what to do next, specific to their demographics and their current state in the journey. And this can all then be used to drive the KPI that your business wants to achieve, whether that's sales or saving customers, driving profit or increasing customer happiness. In reality, all of these are numbers, and if they're numbers, we can maximize or optimize it. I don't want to get too technical in this session, but let's go in and talk a little bit about what's known as recurrent neural networks, and I'll try and describe that in a non-technical way. So let's say I'm thinking about, or I'm in the process of converting on product A. I might take out a loan, or I might buy a new phone, or I might start a new contract, or I simply might buy something from a retailer. Now, if we deconstruct the journey that the customer has been on into the recent actions that have occurred, the time between them, the order of them, and so on, and also bring in the contextual customer information too, we can essentially represent all possible journeys and customer types into a finite set of states. We could even consider external factors such as the weather or unemployment rates as a state too, to really take everything into account. Now each state has a potential value, which is ultimately for people in that state, what was their ultimate value for us? And that's kind of a state value. We also then know for each of those states, we can observe which action occurred or which potential actions can occur. And that helps us understand what new state the customer moved to. And remember, an action could just simply be, we did nothing for 5 minutes. But for some customers, this is the right thing to do to allow them to complete their journey or complete a basket, for example. It could be a pop-up to say special APR this month or $5 discount if you choose the 24-month contract. Again, things that help people convert on the journey. So ultimately, we now know all the information. So we know what states the customer are in, we know the actions we can take with them, and we know their value if we take that action. And crucially, with our approach here, the new state can also take into account the next state after that as well. So it's truly optimizing that customer journey. This ultimately is our recurrent neural network. Recurrent because the states don't actually change. It's just which state a customer is in that changes. And we can also feed back lots of information into it to get it to learn better. And that's why it's called reinforcement learning, essentially. Okay, let's move on. Now, with a little bit more additional innovative analytics, neural networks to identify the significant states, we then end up with a simple but large crosstab of all the different states, all the different actions, the value of each element in this matrix. So it's simply a choice of picking the right one that's tuned to what you as a business are trying to achieve. And there's a hint here, you choose the biggest number, basically. And that's not quite as simple as a toggle button, but it's getting there. So this could give your business the simplicity of one model to rule them all, and could simplify and replace a lot of the existing effort and analytics that you are doing. But as such, as it is complex, it's not without its deployment and business change aspects. But with the right effort and focus, this vision is achievable. So let's wrap up. So in summary, I would encourage you to use your expert insight to start testing and learning about the customer journeys that exist in your business and start creating better ones. Secondly, I would try and get a grip on attribution, truly understand the net impact of your activities and understand the combination effect within those customer journeys. And finally, I would start bringing in true customer analytics, because those previous two steps aren't particularly customer focused. So start bringing in true customer analytics into the challenges of mastering the customer journey. Either use some out-of-the-box solutions or start exploring the more bespoke and complex AI solutions so that you can really drive greater value across this challenge of customer journey management. Okay, so with that summary said, I'm ready to take any questions that you might have.